Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the annual general meeting of the Godalming Learning Partnership. I think it's quite a great moment, this, because we're obviously 18 months in, and we're at the limit, really, of having the AGM, but here we are. Welcome to everybody that's here. Welcome to all colleague directors and trustees of the partnership itself, and of all the various people who have very kindly come along today as well. I think we pretty much all said hello, but we've got representatives from the community, from other schools, and staff from other schools as well. So welcome to educational partner schools such as St Edmunds and I didn't say anybody from Broadwater, but
yeah, Debbie.
Okay,
Debbie Lawson.
And Debbie. And various constituency interests that we have, staff as well from other schools. Governors on the list as well. Jonathan, we've already said good morning to as well, from the Diocese Education Department, Deputy Director. Welcome one and all. As I said, it's great. After all the development time that we went through, which must have been over something like a 2 or 3 year period, and all the consultation that we went through, or particular schools did to form the trust, it's fantastic that it happened, and it's fantastic what we've achieved in that 18 months. And I obviously won't steal any thunder from Adam and Andrew, because they're just about to go into a summary of that, which we'll hear. And you've all had the annual report as well, which was, I thought, extremely well produced. And thank you, Rachel, for fantastic production.
Pleasure.
It's been quite an 18 months. Didn't really expect the AGM to be like this, with us all looking at each other on computer screens. I thought we'd be in the village hall where the board meetings normally take place, but a key part of our history so far obviously has been during the closure and the partial return as well, and it's been a tremendous, completely separate phase. Tremendous amount of work's taken place there as well, which we'll also hear about. So I'm very pleased that we're here, and very pleased that we've got as far as we have under all the circumstances so far. So apologies for absence. To take first, we got both Reverend Anne and Hugh Lawson from the Chandler, Ruth Burns from St Mark's and All Saints, Jane Vanderbroek from Surrey County Council, Alex Tier from the Diocese, Peter Martin from Waverley Borough Council, and Penny Marriott, the Waverley Mayor. So those are our apologies. We haven't had any further ones, have we, since they were recorded?
No.
Okay, good. Any declarations of interest, either generally or in a specific agenda item? Okay, good. Right, let's move on then. So I'm going to invite Adam Sampson now, who is chair of the head teachers group, and Andrew Smith, who's associate director for the partnership, to give us an overview. I think they've got a slideshow, actually. Sounds very exciting. A slideshow of the work of the trust over the last 18 months. So over to Adam and Andrew.
So Adam or Andrew, would you be happy to just give me a nod when you want to move to the next slide?
Yeah, I think it's just as long as Andrew's got the share screen permission.
That's me.
I'll sort of hand over to Andrew, really.
Okay, over to you, Andrew.
There we go. Can you see my screen okay?
I can, yes.
Can everybody?
Yep.
Menu at the moment.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, off you go.
I haven't got these. No, I've got the file page rather than the presentation.
Yeah, same.
Okay, let's have the presentation.
You just need to click on the, that's it, there we go.
Okay. Well, this is going to be a summary, so just a few minutes, but obviously one of our successes of the last 18 months is to have formed the Godalming Learning Partnership itself, and I don't think that should be underestimated in the amount of work that's involved, both pre-decision and post-decision. There's been a lot of work involved, and but we also shouldn't forget that we were the Godalming Confederation before that, and worked very successfully as a group of schools for a good 15 years before the moment of becoming the Godalming Learning Partnership. And I think it's that bedrock really of collaboration over all those years that made the Godalming Learning Partnership possible. So we've got 11 member schools, we've got a number of educational partners, and as Michael's already said, we've finished our first year, or our first 18 months actually, and I'll come to the details of what that has meant a bit later in the presentation. So next slide, please, Rachel. So a major part of our work has been about raising standards within the schools, and in the 18-19 year that's centred around maths, and in 1920 and onwards it's centred around English. But when heads work to identify these areas for schools to work on, I would want everybody to understand that this is not just a whim or a fancy. It comes from detailed analyses of their own schools. Heads work together in groups of 3 schools where they sort of go into each other's schools to look at various aspects, issues that the head teacher identifies. And they also meet together regularly once a year to discuss their data. So they understand their schools and their partner schools very well. And out of that comes an understanding of common issues. And that's where these pieces of work comes from. So in particular, about a year ago, schools identified the standard of writing as a key area for most of the schools within the partnership. And as a result, we've developed the Talk for Writing programme. And Talk for Writing is a national project aimed at raising the standard of children's writing. And we've gone into a 2-year project with that, with Talk for Writing. And that involves quite a detailed programme of in-school training. So we've got, over the next 2 years, 4 joint inset days. And in between those, we've got what are called leadership days, when the head teachers and literacy leaders of all the schools join together to drive the project forward. And this is probably the most most major project we've had, and the most expensive. So we're very keen that we evaluate the progress and success of this, and heads have identified groups of children that they're going to monitor through this project to see what the effect is of the project on writing in the schools. I ought to just pause, perhaps Adam, if you want to come in at any time, please do. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think we're just sort of echoing what you've said already, to be honest. The fact that I think schools have embraced this wholeheartedly, I think, across the GLP. And I think it has always been quite a challenge to find some sort of common ground of those challenges that are, I suppose, recognised in each and every school. And I think this was something that I think there's quite a lot of sort of buy-in from all the schools, and they can see the real benefits, the tangible sort of benefits of adopting this sort of project. And I think it's very exciting, I think, and the fact that the English leads have been sort of getting together quite regularly. We've already, like you've mentioned, got case studies set up so we can actually analyse, if you like, the impact of Talk for Writing over a period of time, and really identify which group we're going to use as our sort of our case study. So I think it's a really well thought through project. It's expensive, but it's a really well thought through project that I think every school feels that they'll benefit from.
Yeah. Well, just the last word on expense, really. I mean, it's only this kind of project that we can afford through working together as a partnership, and it is a lot of money. But when you think it actually averages out at £500 per school, that's not an excessive amount of money to spend on whole school training. Next slide, please, Rachel. Okay, we've, as many as you know, started our School Direct teacher training program in collaboration with Winchester University, and we are at the end of the first cohort of students going through that program. So we recruited 7 last September. They've been working in our schools and going off to Winchester to do training every fortnight, and they're just about to complete, and they're all on course to pass and qualify. And the panel to, if you like, finally agree that was yesterday at Winchester, and just awaiting to hear confirmation of their passes. We've received very positive feedback from the students about our program, which is good because we took a long time to actually develop that and plan it. And also it's nice to have feedback from Winchester University, who've been very impressed with our recruitment process, the rigor of our interviewing to get the right students, and also the quality of our training program. For next September 2020, we've recruited so far 6 students, which is about the same, it is exactly the same number as this time last year. And so there may be more, but the current crisis, COVID-19, might prevent that. It might encourage it. I don't know. It's a very difficult thing to predict. But we have decided going forward that we will next year advertise ourselves more heavily in the Farnham and Guildford areas. These are 2 areas we've not put ourselves into too much so far, because they have very well established school direct programs already and teacher training programs already. But we feel confident enough now to put ourselves up against those other people. And we know that people have chosen us in this last year over those other areas because of our offer, which is very pleasing. Adam?
Yeah, I think it's been sort of widely discussed, I think, at sort of governor level and also board level about this programme, and how I think we should all be quite proud of where it's got to when we're in our first year. But like Andrew says, the feedback has been very positive. The programme has been very carefully thought through. I've been on the working party of that to really sort of drive the subject matter and making sure that it's the topics are related to certain points in the year, so they align as carefully as possible. And I think it's something that we have got very positive feedback from the Winchester University, considering they have many school direct programs with many different sort of areas of the sort of, I suppose, that part of the country. And considering we were a new group coming in, it was very well received, our programme. And I think this is something that's taken a lot of work, and it's something that is a real tangible sort of benefit, if you like, or success of the GLP, and the fact that we've got these teachers in our schools. Some are already securing positions in our schools. And I think the fact that we've got the numbers secure for next year, and like Andrew said, we need to be a bit more adventurous and braver and confident that we can compete with the other teacher training sort of centres, if you like, because actually we do offer something quite unique, and that has been widely said in the people that we've interviewed this year and last year. And yeah, we've got our leaders that are delivering these sessions, and I think once again, going back to similar to the Talk for Writing, everyone is buying into it, and I think it's only as successful as the schools that are able to sort of buy into it and deliver the high quality sessions which they have been. And we're already in a position now to tweak and adjust our sessions for next year. We're receiving immediate feedback and making those little fine tweaks. We might be moving certain sessions because they probably lend themselves at certain points of the year better than others, and so we're already confident the next year's programme is going to be even better.
Yeah, thanks. And lastly, for me, I think we should understand that training teachers is not only good for those trainees, it's also good for the staff in our schools, and it makes them look at the whole process of teaching and brings new ideas into the school. And so it's wider than just getting new teachers into the profession. Next slide, please, Rachel. Okay, well, I've referred to this before earlier. Each school belongs to what we call a trio, 3 schools that work together, and each term they go into one of those 3 schools and look at an issue which the school has identified. And that results in a scrutiny of going into lessons, looking at books, looking at planning, whatever the issue happens to be. And at the end of it, a report is generated with areas for development or suggested ways forward. And these are greatly valued by head teachers, not just the host head teacher who has an important issue looked at but by the visiting head teachers who see another school in action and pick up many ideas through that process. And we've become braver with these over the last couple of years, and now it's quite usual for them to include other senior managers in the school, and that is good professional training for them, and also widens the impact of the IPR through the school. And going on to that, we had a pilot set up with 2 of our trios this year to look at, to ensure that the impact of these IPRs. The process itself is good and important, but we want to make sure that something positive and permanent comes out of the review. And so 2 sets of 3 schools decided that they were going to hold a joint SLT meeting where the SLT of each school would have to talk to the other SLT groups to show the impact of the IPR, the review that had happened on the school. And again, this is, in our view, good professional development, but it focuses the mind on what's coming out of the review and what is put in place to address the issue that was being looked at. And I think this is a definite good development of this already good bit of work. So that's the IPRs. Also this year, it was planned that every school, this didn't quite happen, but most schools had an annual health check from an independent educational consultant. The idea of this was to identify strengths and areas of development and in that way help us identify common areas going forward. So it would affect our strategic planning and our development planning. It would also flag up, because they were sort of basically Ofsted based, it would also identify any of our schools in difficulty. And one of the sort of thoughts behind the GLP is that heads want to be able to support other heads and other schools if they get into difficulty. And we, as a partnership, have got to work out how this works, because it's problematic, but we also do have some facility to get behind one of our partner schools and help them if things are not quite as they should be. And I think this is an area of work for the board, because it obviously affects governors and governance, and it's a tricky problem, but it's one that we need to embrace, because I think it will make us, the partnership, stronger going forward and help schools within the partnership more. Adam?
Yeah, I think you've just sort of alluded to earlier. I think one of the key sort of next steps really is to ensure that that there's real sort of significant sort of impact, which is why I think we did want to start up the meetings at the end of the year to show actually this is the sort of tangible sort of outcome of the IPR. Because obviously we need to make sure that when these heads get together, there's a real sort of action plan that's put in place, and then we're able to see and share what the impact of the IPRs of that has actually been, and obviously they'll then become a lot more productive, I guess, and have greater impact going forward. So I think that's something that we really need to sort of continue to push, because they have evolved quite significantly, I think, over the last couple of years, and it can only sort of improve further, I think.
Yeah. And of course, the thing I didn't say, but is written here, is that those 2 pilot schemes have been postponed because of COVID-19. They're not going to happen. So there's something we need to write into our programme for next year. Okay, Next slide is professional development. We run, as I think you know, leaders for meetings for our maths leaders, literacy leaders, deputies and school business managers and Senkos, and to share good practice, to be a sort of network and a mutual support group, to share ideas and so on. And these have worked very well over the last few years. In particular, the maths leaders helped to develop and deliver the maths inset training across all the schools in 18-19, and the literacy leaders are doing the same with the Talk for Writing project this year. And these are, I think, important groups. Going forward, I think ideally heads would like to develop groups across all subject areas, you know, like humanities, science, PSHE, art, music. But this is sort of problematic for us. Logistically, it's very difficult to bring this about. And we have a limited number of meetings at the moment. And that is quite difficult for us to maintain, to have a wider group and ensure that they are worthwhile. Is a major challenge for us, and we've got to think of ways of doing this that is practical and manageable. Moderation, we moderate children's work across the partnership. This is a really important aspect of school work. Every school wants to know that their assessment of children's work is at the right level, and to have this benchmark across the town is really important for to help schools assess work properly, but also having the backing, if you like, of the fact that they've agreed those standards with other schools. And so obviously this year, moderation will largely be centred on writing to fit in with the Talk for Writing project that we've embarked on. Anything to add, Adam?
Yeah, just to go back to the development groups, it's something I feel sort of quite passionate about, and we've discussed this at a head teacher level about, you know, if we talk about each individual school having a broad and balanced curriculum and valuing different areas of the curriculum and not sort of marginalising it so that it's actually maths and English sort of centred, then we need to move beyond the development groups as being just maths leaders and literacy leaders. I know there's more a greater, I suppose, amount of data streams that are linked to maths and English, so it's easier to sort of see how much the impact has been made on those subjects and through different projects like Talk for Writing, for example. But I think we do need to make sure that we're keeping the profile, if you like, of the other subject areas as high as possible. And even though it's not listed here, but Andrew mentioned it, is the PSHE. I think that's going to become a much more crucial subject when schools start to reopen again, as to how we educate the children in the soft side of school, if you like. And there's going to be some quite significant challenges, I think, that schools face around mental health and well-being. I think the PSHE curriculum's got quite a key role to play. And so if there's a way of actually facilitating leaders of those subjects in schools to get together and look at common ways of moving those sort of subjects forward, then I think that's can only be a good thing. But like Andrew says, we don't want to get to the stage where we're growing sort of too quick, too fast, where actually it becomes unwieldy, really. We've got a very established set of groups already, and it's how we manage the time out of school, when they meet, how they meet. You know, Zoom might be something that is a sort of a legacy, if you like, of the COVID sort of front. We're able to meet a lot more readily virtually, which might be a step forward. But I think it's making sure that we try and balance the value of the wider curriculum with the reality of how these members of staff and these subject leaders can meet, because in certain small schools there might be a teacher that's leading a number of subjects, in which case it becomes slightly more problematic maybe for those schools. So it is something where we are still discussing, and I think there's some sort of further dialogue to have around how we manage that, because I think it is an important step to move forward.
Thanks. Next slide, please, Rachel. Okay, a number of training things we provided over the last 18 months, particularly around resilience. We're very keen to look after our teachers and our staff and make sure that the rigours of the the job, the profession, don't drive them out. And with that in mind, we brought in this resilience training, which we've given to all our NQTs and NQTs +1, and a number of schools have taken this wider within their schools and given this training to staff generally and support staff. That's not something, that latter thing is not what we've done through the partnership, but we have done it for NQTs and NQTs +1. And we embarked on some governor training last year and planned a session with the local authority on managing complaints, as it was an issue that had arisen within a few of our schools. And we had that developed and planned, but it got delayed because of COVID-19, and we'll have to start that again next academic year when we can. Okay, Adam?
Yeah, nothing from me, thank you.
Next slide, please, Rachel. And of course, with our secondary schools using the school sports coordinator post, we deliver this extended sports curriculum for schools, largely centered on the secondary school facilities, which is a great experience for the partnership's children. And this is partly funded by us and partly by the secondary schools. And I have to say, it's a great benefit for our schools. They get to do sporting activities that they wouldn't normally do. It's also of benefit to the secondary schools because they develop their sports leaders through this, as well as any transition benefits of the programme too. Got to say that it's a large chunk of our money spent on this programme, and we're always looking at our financial viability going forward, and this would have to perhaps be one of the things we looked at if finances dwindle or funding streams disappear going forward, as we will have to look at a number of other things and make hard decisions. Nadam, next slide.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, agree with that.
And just finally, I think the last, oh no. Well, a lot of work has gone on at board level, and it's been good to have full board meetings as we have in the last year, but also we've got this system of the steering group driving and preparing the business. And I'm sure everybody here this morning, you know, appreciates the amount of work that's gone on, particularly from people like Rachel, who've developed the background documentation of the partnership to make us really rock solid in terms of policies, procedures, operational documents, job descriptions, and the like. And I think we should be very grateful for Rachel for that work, and I think we should be proud of the structure that's behind the board and the partnership. And that's now continuing. We've got Louise Muntz is the bursar at Godalming Junior School, but is now the GLP finance officer, and she's now developed our accounts on a new finance program, and is ready when we are able to, with the bank, set up our bank account and start managing our accounts in a different way. And she, as you'll see in a moment, has prepared all the paperwork to go to Companies House, the financial statements and so on. And so, you know, we are up and running, doing the right things as a board behind the work, very good work that's going on in our schools. There are areas for us to work on here. I think Michael's said this a number of times to you, that we need to work on the timing of the work of the head teachers group and of the board to ensure that the board is properly able to contribute to the development planning cycle of the partnership's work. And on a sort of no less important, but in a sense administrative line, we've got to get better at our information streams about governors, the directors changing. As chairs of governors change, we need to make sure those names go through to Companies House to make sure our records at Companies House are up to date and on the ball. And at the moment, we're not quite there. And at the board meeting following this, hopefully we can start to put this right. Okay, and the last slide, I think. Well, I just got to say that, you know, trust, support, collaboration is what this whole partnership's centered on. But in the last 18 years, this has grown, in my view, exponentially, really. And I think a lot of the work that you've seen that we've done in the last 18 months has built relationships and friendships across the schools. You know, it's not just at head teacher level. You've got, you know, groups of year 3 teachers who now know each other, go into a meeting, they know their names, they sit down, they're happy to work with them and share things with them. And I think that's happened over the last 18 months, 2 years, and it's of benefit to everybody, I think. And of course, you've got the work at head teacher level that was already there. But we've also got, I think it's starting to work at governor level. We've had some governors, you know, sort of ask whether the partnership can help in some way in their schools. And I think that's only happened in a very small way in the last 18 months, but I think it's something that we should grow over in the future. And I suppose lastly, although it's not in this period, COVID-19 has seen the camaraderie between heads. You know, it's just been amazing and humbling to see in the last 3 months heads work so diligently and, you know, responsibly over this whole issue, sharing ideas, working out solutions. And I think that's sort of strengthened the partnership even more. And that's it, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was very, very comprehensive and very, very obviously informative as well. Thank you for that. And just reflecting on that, thank you to yourself, Andrew, and also to Adam as chair of the Heads Group in your considerable contributions to all of that you've just summarised. Thank you to both, as well as everybody else, of course. I'm just conscious of the time, so I'm going to press on to the next item. At the end, we have had 3 notified questions, which obviously we're planning to respond to. There may be a little bit of time for things arising out of that presentation as well, but I am conscious of the time, so we'll press on now. As previewed by Andrew to finance, just a quick overview of the financial reports and the accounts which have now been prepared. And then there's a matter of auditing as well, which I'll come on to as a second point. So Andrew mentioned that Louise Muntz has taken on the role of finance officer for the partnership. So I shall invite Louise to give the overview.
Louise, would you like me to put up any of the statements? Okay, I can't hear you, Louise.
What's
You
that,
might
Matt?
need to unmute yourself.
Appear to be muted on.
There we are. I think Louise is unmuted.
She's unmuted here, but sometimes they need to do it themselves.
I'll pop next door.
Yes, fortunately, they're in adjacent rooms.
She's coming to you.
This is how you get around technology, you see.
You.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can, absolutely.
Sorry about that.
So, I didn't hear your answer to do you want me to put up a profit and loss or balance sheet?
Balance sheet, please, Rachel.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start talking while
Sure,
you pick
do.
that up. Okay, good morning, everyone. I just want to do a very, very quick run through of what we've got prepared to submit to Companies House. So as the GLP is now a limited company, we need to report accounts every year. And because we're quite small, we come under the bracket of micro-entity accounting. Basically, that means for us that it's a very simplified way of accounting. So we don't have to report a profit and loss on Companies House. We just submit a balance sheet. We don't have to have an audit report or even a director's report on Companies House. So in terms of reporting, it's quite simple to do. As Andrew said, we've purchased, the GLP have purchased an accounting system called Zero, which means that we can keep the accounts completely separate to FMS, which the schools use to do their delegated accounting. So it makes it very clear which funds are the GLPs. So we're going to be reporting company accounts to Companies House. These need to be filed by the 7th of September. We're ready to go with them, and what you can see on the screen now is the balance sheets that we've got. Just some things that's important to note on here. The accounting period that this is showing is ending the 31st of March, but it's from the 7th of December 2018. So it's from the start of the GLP setup. So it's an extended accounting period. And going forward, it will just be a 12-month accounting period. The reason for this is we wanted to bring the accounting in line with the financial year. So we currently have a bank account application in process. And because we're still waiting on that, and the delay is, again, due to the coronavirus and staffing at banks, that's been held up slightly. So currently the bank is held with us at Godalming Junior School. So the first item you'll see, the current assets, is the amount in the bank that Godalming Juniors have here. But below that, you'll see that we have creditors, which are accounts payable. So these are invoices that we've received in that Godalming Juniors have paid on behalf of the GLP at the moment. So at the bottom there, you'll see that the reserves that we're going to be transferring over into the next financial year, starting 1st of April 2020, is 21,900. I don't think there's anything else for me to add to that at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Does anybody have a quick question on anything to do with the accounts? Okay, thank you, Louise. And
I'll switch.
the second point on the finance topic was just to note, I think that's been alluded to by both Andrew and Louise, that there's no requirement to appoint an auditor to audit our accounts, because we are a micro entity, so we fall beneath the threshold where that would be necessary. So that's for noting. Okay, moving along.
We are going to appoint we are going to get somebody external to look at our accounts.
Yes, which is not, if you like, a professional role as such,
No,
but yes, we are
just
seeking
good practice.
If anybody knows a qualified practitioner who would be interested on a voluntary basis of undertaking a check over, as has just been mentioned, then bring them forward. But yes, absolutely, somebody will do a check over, but it's not the same as auditing. Auditors actually go through the detail of what backs up everything that is in the account. Okay, so membership then. Thank you, Louise. It's really to note the appointments of new members of the board. As Andrew referred to, people come and go. So we're just acknowledging the appointment and saying welcome to Marie Wilcox for St James's Primary, Joe Thomas, Busbridge Infants, and Mel Isherwood at Milford Infants. So welcome to the board. And then, so the final thing was that Rachel, in setting up the meeting, invited notification of any particular questions. And we've got a three-parter came in. Just to sort of give an overview, I'm going to invite Adam and or Andrew to respond to these, but just a kind of overview of them. This is actually an interesting illustration of the model that we have as a partnership, where schools retain a very high degree of autonomy in terms of the operation of individual schools, and that really does impact on the answer to some of these questions, although there's a generality. And also, obviously, one of the points of the partnership, as Andrew referred to, is about mutual support and sharing of good practice. So it actually does cut both ways. But the first question that was notified to Rachel was highly pertinent at the moment. What can be done to prevent any possible long-term psychological distress or mental health issues where the children are either in lockdown or socially distancing? And are there any guidelines for parents or teachers to follow? So as I say, that clearly would be practiced with individual schools, but there is a cross-partnership interest in this. And I know through my discussions with Adam, a lot of discussion between the heads group about this very important matter. Shall I ask you, Adam, to give a response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been some guidance that has come from the DfE around the charitable organisations that have a number of resources that schools are to sort of utilise, I guess, certainly during this period and beyond. And I know that, only recently schools will be sending out a letter around the changing of provision, for example, on the 17th of July, and with primarily transition and how we can sort of best support our children moving forward from September onwards, with their sort of well-being and mental health in mind. I alluded earlier to the fact that PSHE as a subject area is going to become quite a crucial leadership position, I think, within schools, about how the provision in each individual school can be certainly sort of tailored, if you like, to the sort of situation we find ourselves in. But I also don't think it's sort of limited to the children. It's the staff as well that needs to be sort of taken into consideration. And I think that Andrew alluded to it earlier as well, about what the work of the GLP is sort of going forward, is making sure that we are equipping the staff in our schools with the skill set to be able to deliver sort of high level pastoral and sort of nurture sort of activities, whilst also making sure that they're balancing their work-life balance as well, and that they don't feel sort of overwhelmed by almost sort of the catch-up work that might be almost like the elephant in the room, really, that needs to be delivered. So I think it is a sort of a high agenda item. It's mentioned at every GLP head teachers meeting, and I know that each individual school is going to have their own strategy as to how they can welcome back children and how they can best support them. I know that from our perspective, Godalming Junior School, we're looking to invite each of the other year groups back for a week before the end of term. We've got the capacity to do that, we've got the staff to do that, and we've got the space to do that. And the prime reason is to make sure that their sort of well-being is taken into consideration. It's not about trying to cram 12 weeks of maths into a week. It's about making sure that we can have contact with these children. We can hopefully set their minds at ease. We can reassure them that school is still here and it's still sort of here for them primarily. And there might be some slight changes to rules and hygiene measures and so on, but we want to try and have that contact with children so they're best prepared for the summer holidays and beyond, rather than starting cold in a new year group or in a new school in some cases, having those high levels of anxiety. So I think all schools are doing what they can to try and minimise those anxieties, and I think that's something I think we hope the likes of Ofsted and the DfE recognise, that as much as the vulnerable groups have been highly sort of mentioned, and they've got to have a very high status in any school anyway. And I know it's been very well publicised, if you like, around the fact that they've been most sort of damaged, if you like, by lockdown. We all know that, but we just hope there's not a sort of an agenda, if you like, come September, that there's, again, this 15 weeks amount of catch-up that's going to need to be done at some point. I think we need to be a bit realistic, that every school is in the same boat, and we don't want to be in a position where we're raising those anxiety levels in children because they feel that they've got to do the catching up, or we raise the anxiety levels in teachers because they feel they've got to deliver the catching up work. I think we just need to sort of take a breath. And there's an opportunity here to have a look at what the Ofsted framework, which might have to also be altered in light of this, and what SATs might look like. I think we need to be aware that actually we can only do so much in our schools, and the prime, I'm sure, objective from September is to ensure that children return to school safely, they feel happy, they feel welcome, they feel safe. And then sort of the academic side is sort of secondary to that as far as September is concerned. And I just hope that the powers that be sort of recognise that needs to be the priority of schools, is getting the children back and making them feel part of the school again, and lowering those sort of anxiety levels. And then the academic side will come next. But I think trying to do the catch-up work in the space of a year is going to be sort of impossible, really. And I don't think schools need that additional pressure. But I know that it is a high agenda item. As I said, I think the PSHE curriculum is going to become quite crucial. It certainly is here. And I think schools will be doing all they can to try and make sure that any anxiety levels are lowered, and we consider the mental health and well-being of the children as sort of paramount importance, as the sort of #1 priority come September.
I think you can tell from that there's a considerable amount of discussion and work gone on this very issue, and on the impact of the current period we're going through on every level, whether it's educational attainment or whether it's mental health, as Adam's been talking about. A lot within the heads group has taken place. I think you've covered what the second point was, Adam, as well. What will be done to make sure children are not scared after the pandemic, so they can interact and play normally? But that was part of, I think, what you just said. The third part of the question.
Can I just flag up that we've had another question from Tom about...
Can I take that in the end?
Sure. And John O'Connor would like to have the chance to chat for 2 minutes if possible. Okay. Just so you know, because we've only got about 9 minutes left.
I know, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I think the third one we can deal with quite quickly. Given the aims of the GLPs for financial efficiency, are the teaching and teaching assistant salaries still pegged at local authority rates, or are they decided by the GLP? Well, sorry, I'll just finish the other bits. If the latter, then how do they compare? And also, does the pay ratio compare between the lowest and the high? How does it compare between the lowest and highest? Just to say that one of the key principles of the model that we've adopted here is that, again, it's back to local autonomy of the schools within the partnership. And for those who form the trust, actually became the employer of its staff. And I guess has freedom to change. But I know when we went through the consultation period in the autumn of 2000 and what was it, 18, then one of the assurances that was given was about continuing on same terms and conditions as well. So really, it doesn't. The question, excellent question, but it doesn't really apply because of the circumstances and the model that we've adopted. So moving on to Tom's question then, which I can see here. Do we envisage getting to a point in the future where we would grow no longer to be considered as a micro entity? Just to, Andrew may want to.
I'm happy to answer this when you're ready, Michael.
Just say a little bit before you come in, which is that one of the key things we did do in the last year was consider our strategic objectives, and they've been through the board and they've become established and they're now published. And part of that was, how do we respond to opportunities to grow in the future, if that's what we wanted to do? If, for example, if we were approached by a school, let's say down the road, that wasn't exactly within our geographical area, how would we respond to that? And we hadn't got a policy on that. So really thinking about strategic objectives was a key part of what the steering group and the board have done in the last year. There are no empire building ambitions within the partnership, but there may well be opportunities that we might want to seize in the future. I think I would say that it wouldn't be anything to do with being a micro entity. It wouldn't be about moving from being a micro entity to being a small business. And I think, without knowing the figures off the top of my head, we've got an awful long way to go. And I can see Louise has got a hand up.
Yeah, can I just say, being a micro entity, your turnover has to be less than 632,000.
Yes.
You have to have less than 316,000 on the balance sheet, or less than 10 employees. You have to have at least 2 of those,
yes,
in order to be a micro entity. So if we ever think that we're going to get above any of those, then that's when we would need to look at becoming a small.
that's right. So, but anyway, thank you for that, because it illustrates it's a long way to go, and it's not an aim anyway, not an aim in itself. Andrew.
Yeah, well, of course, some of that's to do with how much money schools put in the pot for the work of the partnership, and currently schools are struggling to keep to current levels, the sort of levels that you're seeing, and I can't see in the current financial situation how schools are going to be given more generous budgets to allow us to grow the partnership work in a very serious way. So in that way, I feel the sums of money that we're talking about are likely to maintain for the next few years. And like you said, we've got no desires to grow an empire. There may have to be opportunities if we want to make sure that all our schools have got partners of similar kinds of schools, and that would be the only reason why we might expand.
Yeah, okay. Right, thank you. And then John, who I didn't introduce or say, give up my thanks to at the beginning, so I'll do it now. John O'Connor from CSNet, who were our advisors, our consultants during the formation of the partnership, and helped us become what we've become, and obviously has become a member of the board subsequently. So I think you wanted to say something, John?
Yeah, it's just a brief overview. I mean, it's good to be with you, and for those that haven't met before, I look after the national family of around about 230 cooperative schools, and I wanted to start by just offering congratulations, because I think this is one of the really most engaging reports and summaries of an amazing amount of work at a particularly difficult time. So firstly, to everybody involved, I think I'm going to have the opportunity in about an hour at our National Advisory Board to talk about good practice. You've just moved up into that agenda very nicely, so thank you for that. Secondly, I think you've referred quite appropriately to, it's all very well being cooperative, but does it work? And the point is to have impact. And I think Adam and Andrew and others have referenced the fact that's what it's for. We work for children. It's a cooperative. It's a business, yes, but it's a shared enterprise. And I think that's very important. When we talk about mental health and well-being, that comes into it resonates with the values of a cooperative. And we're talking about self-help. So one of the things I just want to drop in there is to reference, you hopefully will stay aware that as a national organisation, we also monitor schools which have much to offer, and within the Godalming Partnership, there's plenty of evidence, and schools that need support. So we have our own observatory platform, which indicates where anybody might need a bit of TLC, a bit of support, professional collaboration. Stay with us on that, because I think it's going to be very significant in the year ahead with changes in Ofsted and SATs. I think, Adam, I'm optimistic there will be a more intelligent approach to recognising good practice. It'd be nice to have that for a change. So well done on that. And finally, just on the cooperative theme, I think there is a huge amount that is important to recognise, particularly now in the professionalism of school leadership, all the staff, all the contributors. Over time, I hope that there'll be work that we can support to think outward, both into your wider learning community. I notice a couple of people on this call are listed as parents, and I think that's incredibly important to say, how do families engage with and appreciate what you have as a cooperative, because it's their cooperative as well as a school partnership between professionals. And the very last thing is just to say that already I'm pleased that there have been, if you like, correspondences, ugly word, between Godalming's partnership and other members of our network to look at common issues. And I just want to encourage you to carry on. So finishing where I started, I think a really impressive summary of ongoing work, ongoing commitment, and I'm really pleased to see it happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Right, well, remarkably, I was bang on time for concluding the meeting. So thank you to everybody who has joined us and participated in the meeting today. And again, just to reflect a lot of things other people have said about, thanks about helping us to get where we are. Everybody that's been involved, it's been a real team effort, both in terms of short-term areas of work and also the ongoing aspects as well. In particular, people like Andrew, and Andrew mentioned Rachel as well, who I think are very, very fortunate to have as a highly expert and highly dedicated clerk who has produced a lot of the constitutional backgrounds to what we have as well. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Okay, so there we are. It's 9:30. Members of the board, we now, I was going to say clock out and clock back in again, but that's not